where am I at on my publishing journey? Hi, welcome to WriterQuest. I'm Rob Gibson. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring that little bell icon so that you're notified every time I post a new video. Generally, I post about every other week. My publishing journey has taken a number of years. In a previous video, I showed the first book that I ever wrote was in 5th grade. It was terrible. But since that point, I've wanted to write a novel. That was a good long while ago. And every time I started to write a novel, I would get a couple chapters in and I would stop. And either I would lose the inspiration or I would lose interest in that story on several of them. Until I found the fantasy story that I'm currently working on. That one really hit home for me. And it's really where I was like, okay, this is what I need to write. From there, it kind of grew. Every story does. And even then, it took quite a while. I wrote the first chapter of my book probably about 10 years ago for the first time. And because I didn't have a structured, disciplined writing schedule or anything like that, I wrote when I felt like it. And it was months before I would get back to it. Life would get in the way, family would get in the way, other obligations, things like that would always seem to get in the way of writing. So it took a very long time to get past that first chapter. But what took even longer was every time I decided, hey, I need to get back into writing, I would open up and I'd have to refresh my memory of where I was at. So I would reread that first chapter. And as anyone who is writing knows, when you go back to read something, you inevitably end up editing it. You go back and you're like, oh, you tweak this or you tweak that, and something will give you a different idea, and this would be cool, I'll try that. And so I wrote and rewrote that first chapter probably 25 or 30 times in the space of that 10 years. And then about 2 years ago, talking with my best friend, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to make a goal and I'm going to stick to it and I'm going to write. And I sat down and I started with that first chapter and I wrote the book. I wrote my first draft in about a year. And again, life would get in the way a little bit. I had other obligations that had me basically stop writing for about 4.5 to 6 months. I was a high school football coach, and writing during season was extremely difficult. So I didn't try. But it took about a year and I got the book written. After I did that, I got some advice on how to work on the second draft. I decided that I was going to do a word one rewrite for my second draft. That's just, it seemed the way that my mind would work the best. And the way to make sure the continuity that something I changed in the first chapter would actually, if I wouldn't miss something that should affect later on in one of the other chapters, because I could follow the story linear. And I write linear. I don't write a scene here and a scene here and a scene here and then try to put them together. I write cohesively. The whole draft comes out from word one and works its way up to the end. And it's all one big writing thing. I don't skip and move things around generally. But as I started that second draft, I realized that first draft that I'd spent nearly a decade writing, there was no longer a place for it in the book. I'm writing a trilogy, so that chapter that I spent so much time on is now going to move and become a piece of one of the other books. But it's no longer in the book I'm actually that I've written first. So I made it through the first draft, and I sent that out before I did any rewrites. I sent that out to people that I knew that could be my alpha readers, not beta readers. Alpha readers are the people that are really brave and want to read the first draft, which is generally far less polished. It's really more of an idea dump. You just kind of throw your story out there and you just write it. I have a hard time just dumping the story. I need to make it a story. So my first draft was still pretty cohesive. It made a book, but it wasn't great. So I got their feedback. I waited for that, and that took a while. My alpha readers were not always super fast. But once I got that back from them, I busted in and I whipped out the second draft, and that in a COVID shortened 2020. So I had a period of time where I didn't write, but it was much shorter this year than it ever has been. And I was able to write the novel, fully rewrite it in probably 8 months. And this time I got beta readers. A couple of them were the same as the alpha readers to read the story again, but I got a couple of fresh faces to put their eyes on it and to read the story and give me their feedback in this stage. And then I got their feedback and I rewrote again. This time I didn't go from a ground up rewrite. I went from point to point, making edits in the chapters that were needed. So I'm through 3 drafts of the book, 2 full writes and a revision. I now currently have the book in the hands of a friend of mine who happens to be a former English professor at a university, and he's going through and doing line edits and grammar edits and things like that and giving me feedback. So that's currently where I'm at, is working on it with an editor. Once I get that done, I'm going to begin querying. I'm hoping for that sometime this May of 2021. That's where I'm at in my publishing process. I've finished my third draft and I'm working on a fourth draft with my editor, and then I will begin querying. So thanks for watching. This has been WriterQuest. I'm Rob Gibson.